They're playing basketball
all around the world. To the beach.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Unrooted Women's Basketball Edition, and my guest for this week's show is none other than freshman forward and guard on the women's basketball team here at Menlo College, Shay Gibbons. Shay, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's start by talking a little bit about yourself. Now, you are the pride of Bullard High School, but you also played a sport in addition to just women's basketball. You did water polo there for 1 year, and you went to the Valley Championship. What got you into water polo, and just how good were you?
So I originally played softball as well growing up.
And softball, okay.
Yeah, so I played softball and I kind of got tired of it when I got to high school. So I wanted to do something else. So I was like, I'll just play water polo. And I'd never played. And so, yeah, it was fun.
So after your first season, you get to the championship. Mm-hmm. What made you not want to return?
Well, I moved high schools. So I moved in the middle of my sophomore year to a new high school. So they were already playing, so I couldn't play for them.
And so at that point you're like, oh, I'll just play basketball.
Yeah, I just stuck to basketball.
I'm dominating at basketball already as it is, so there's no real point.
Yeah, it was fun.
What was your favorite part of water polo?
I like that it was kind of like a couple sports put together. So it was kind of like a little bit of soccer, you got a net, and it's kind of like the setup was like basketball, so I understood it pretty well.
And of course swimming, because you have to
fun.
swim, otherwise you drown. So yeah, definitely a tough sport to play, no doubt. Yeah. Now you can play both the guard and forward positions, and you've been used in that role so far here in your Menlo career. How would you say that versatility is a big strength of your game?
Well, it's definitely gotten me a lot of different opportunities to be on the floor, especially as a freshman. So I just like to contribute in any way that I could.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about the team here. Last week, Menlo split a pair of road games in Arizona, including a loss to number 24 Arizona Christian. It was another slow start for Menlo in that game. You fell into a big hole early. How are you working to avoid those sluggish beginnings?
Well, usually in the start of practices, sometimes we start sluggish in practice. So we definitely emphasize in practice every day, like getting in and just like going hard the whole time, the whole practice, yeah.
And once the Oaks get rolling, of course, as we know, very tough to slow down, and that's why you ladies are able to come back, and you were able to against Arizona Christian. You made it a two-possession game in the fourth quarter. What does that show about the mental toughness and fortitude of your team?
Our team is very tough. The practices we go through, everything that we prepare for, like it's hard for teams to play with us. We like to play up and down. So.
Yeah, especially when you run the floor and speed it up as much as you do. Now, one thing that hasn't wavered much this season for the Oaks has been defense. It seems to be much improved from where it was a season ago, and last year it was already pretty good. What makes the Oaks as good of a defensive team as an offensive team?
Well, defense is very emphasized in our practice plans and everything we do. We're always preparing for teams on their offenses, and we're just always ready for them.
How often are you making adjustments in-game defensively?
Oh,
or do you ever?
Always, yeah.
What's the most notable one? I don't want you to divulge too much of a game plan, but what's a notable change that has really kind of stood out to you?
I think maybe like when teams will start running and jumping us or like trapping us in the front court when we weren't expecting it, we definitely have to get into our different offenses in the front court and make sure that we take care of the ball. So.
And perhaps some of that will be put to the test this weekend with the Oaks going back on the road, rematch against Hope International. They took you to overtime inside Haynes Prim. So how do you get a little bit more separation in this matchup?
I think not starting sluggish. So not giving a team 15 points in the beginning and then putting ourselves in a hole that we have to get out of in the fourth quarter.
Go ahead and put yourselves out to a 15-point advantage early on.
Yeah, right.
I think that's a good way to put it. That's the difference in the ball game. Why don't you start out 15 up instead of 15 down?
Exactly.
All right, Shay, let's get into the final segment of the show. It's called Brownie Bites. I'm going to ask you 3 off-the-wall questions. Give me your best answer.
Okay.
Question number 1, which teammate is the worst swimmer?
I would have to go with Anya. She does not like water, any water.
At all?
At all.
So she won't even get in?
No.
So okay. So you've never ever seen her. She'll just lay by the pool, but she's not going to get in.
Yeah, like we've had pool parties and stuff. Nope.
Is it because of a fear of drowning?
I don't really know.
Because I'll divulge a secret here on the air. I have a fear of drowning. Like, that's my greatest fear in
Drowning.
life. But I'll swim. I have
Yeah.
no problem with it. But if someone holds my head underwater,
Oh yeah.
no, I'm done. That's when I panic. So I can see why maybe if
Yeah.
she has a fear of drowning, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Question number 2, which teammate can hold her breath the longest?
I think I'd have to say Lexi, because she's from Hawaii, so she grew up just around the water.
True.
Yeah.
So she's been underwater. She can hold it for... What do you think a good number would be? How long do you think she could do it?
Maybe a couple minutes.
That seems like a
I know.
long time. How long do you
Yeah.
think you can do it?
Probably pretty long.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, also because that's dangerous,
Yeah.
and I'm not about that on this show, but I don't think
Yeah.
I could go more than a minute, maybe? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It seems like a long time.
When you think about it, like, yeah,
yeah.
2 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, like,
Yeah,
whoa, okay,
right.
that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
And then question number 3, which teammate could have the best radio talk show and steal my job?
So I'd have to say 2 people, and
Okay.
they would do it together.
Okay.
So it would be Aaliyah and Destiny. They are just always hyping each other up and dancing and singing, and yeah.
And of course, having a show is a lot better when you have somebody else to
Exactly.
talk to.
And they would just feed off each other.
They probably would. I'll
Yeah.
have to join their show one day when they get famous for it. Shay, thank you for joining me on the show. I appreciate it. Folks, the women's basketball team, they're on the road this weekend down in Fullerton to take on Hope International, a 2 o'clock tip-off on Saturday. And then they'll find their way back home inside Haynes Prim Pavilion when they take on the Masters University and Westmont, a couple of very important GSAC games the following week. We invite you to tune in to next week's episode of Unrooted Women's Basketball Edition when Shay Gibbons will select the next interviewee by me, Brian Brownfield, right here on the show. Until then, we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
They're playing basketball.
All around the
We
world.
love the basketball.
To the beach, y'all.
Playing